All right. Welcome, everybody, to a special edition tonight of Music Production Night. Let me stop this here. We've been listening to Crazy, which is one of the tracks on my new release, which I just found out today, just a few minutes ago, actually, that it's now off to digital distribution. Ooh, I think that looks a little bright. Hang on, let me turn that down. Whoa! There we go. Got that a little bright, I think. So I just found out today, just a few minutes ago, the album's now gone to digital distribution. So while you could have gotten it the last couple of days on Bandcamp and also on CD Baby, it's now actually gone off to places like Spotify and Amazon and iTunes. It'll all be on those services here in, I don't know, I feel like the average is about a week to 2 weeks, but it rolls in at different services at different times. So I've noticed that some do it a little bit faster than others. But yeah, it's all off to digital distribution. So those of you with Spotify accounts and things like that, you'll be able to actually listen to it right on there. And if you prefer to stream your music like that instead of purchase it. So tonight I wanted to kind of go over and answer like different music production questions, because Matricula and I were kind of going back and forth and doing a lot of talking about music production, different techniques that I've done, things that I've done in the process. And then, so what do I use for digital distribution? So that's a good question. So what I actually do is I use one of the publishing services, which I mentioned earlier was CD Baby. There's TuneCore and a lot of other different ones. They all offer basically the same thing. There was some particular reasons that I went with CD Baby over TuneCore, and I think it was more of the it's more of a one-time cost versus like TuneCore's got some like annual fees in that. And I kind of went with the approach of like, I wanted to publish my music and I wanted to get royalties, and then I don't mind revenue sharing. So that's kind of one of those scenarios where I realize if I'm making money and somebody's processing my royalties and stuff like that for music, that there's certain costs involved with that. So I don't mind a revenue share model, and that's kind of how that was. TuneCore kind of is the other type of model, which is they're advertising, you get to keep all your money. We'll get it all for you, but they charge an annual fee for it. So if you want to publish something, there's an upfront cost to it, and then I don't have to necessarily pay somebody every year to keep publishing my music, collecting my royalties. So if I make money, they make money, which I kind of like that. So that's a good question, Matricula. So Matricula and I were just kind of talking, and then actually I was also having a conversation with Random Girl Singing separately about it, and she was asking a lot of different questions as well, and I thought, what I'd like to do is just kind of go through, talking about the album, putting it together. It's been something I've been working on and off, more on than off, but for probably over a year now, and it's one of those processes that took a long time to kind of get done, and I picked up tips and tricks along the way and thought that I would definitely go ahead and share some of that tonight. So that was kind of the idea, and we've been soliciting questions for a couple of days now of just, other things that people are interested in. So if anybody does have a question, see if you can route it through Matricula. She's kind of our MC with respect to fielding the questions tonight, but certainly I want to make sure that if you do have a question about anything that we've done or anything that I've done, go ahead and ask, because it's one of those things that I did, as part of producing this start to finish. There were some things that I did have to learn along the way, especially from the publishing aspect, that I did not know right off the bat, and certainly want to share in those experiences. So I guess I'll turn to Matricula and see what the first question is that we've got tonight. I know that we just talked a little bit about digital distribution, which is a good question because it's a big part of getting your music out there. And the other cool thing about digital distribution too is I think it gives you a lot more exposure. So that's a good question. So the question is, how long have I been working on the album, and what made me decide to do it? So I've probably been working on it for I want to say about a year and a half, and that's really solid dedication of saying to myself, I really want to produce a whole album. And it's kind of funny because if you look at if you could look at my hard drive, so if you could okay, yeah, those are good ones. So let's talk about work on the album. So it's been a year and a half probably for the entire album start to finish. And I started out, producing a couple of singles, and there's an EP out there, and I said to myself, I want to put together a full length album and, put something together that I can, really kind of show off all the different things and that in producing music. So the first one's for you, and the second. So what made me decide to do it? So it took about a year and a half, and that's when I decided I wanted to actually do the album full length. I've always had I don't want to say an interest, because it's far more than an interest. I would say I've always had a passion for music. For me, music is something that I from the time that I was a kid always wanted to get better at, and I think it's one of those things that you really need to work on your craft if you're going to work on it. And I started really working on it probably, I want to say 10 years ago. I started getting a little bit into electronic music production, and I'd put together 5, 6, 7 songs maybe. And, I never went through the process of, putting them into, like I've done here, actually producing the album, putting it together, getting it out there. So that was roughly about 10 years ago. Fast forward to about 3 years ago, and I was at the point where I said to myself, I really want to make a commitment to producing more, not just DJing, but producing in the sense of, putting together my own music, not just playing other people's music. And it was something that it really meant something to me. And that's when I started really, honing the craft of producing and putting it in there. I've always been able to, kind of put creative stuff together, but more the science of really putting a whole album together. So that was kind of, it was more just constant evolving of that passion for music. So that's why I decided to do it. So the next question is, do you watch your songs in movies, video games, commercial? Hopes for this album. So, I think the biggest hope would be that someone appreciates the music. And I know, Matricula, you've purchased the album, and others have downloaded it too. So I think for me, it's more of the biggest expression. I would absolutely love, any number of the songs to be in a movie or a TV or a commercial or a video game, any of that. I think those are all, great things to have your music in, because I think it's important that, that I produce the music so other people can enjoy it. That's the whole point, right? And part of it is so I can enjoy it. I can express myself just like someone, painting a picture or something like that. So I think for me, I would love that, and that would be so cool. I don't expect that to happen by any means. So my biggest hope is that people hear the music and that they enjoy it, and that's one of the reasons why I do the production on Twitch, and it's one of the reasons why we have the music production nights and we go over some of the music in that, is because I really think that's one of the reasons to do it, is to share that experience. So for me, that was the biggest hope for the album, is that people enjoy the music. So that's kind of the whole thing there on why I put it together. And so when I create a new song, do you know exactly what you want to do, or do you go with the flow? And that one's from Gandalf. So that's a really great question. So I think inspiration comes from a lot of different things. So when I was working on the album, inspiration really does come from all different places. I would hear something on the radio and say, hey, that's kind of a cool riff. I'm really kind of enjoying that. I may hear a bass line, and for me, if I hear like a piece of music, a lot of times I feel like I've gotta go wrap something around it. There, and even when like a regular song is playing, I've always been a person that's like, I kind of like want to remix it in my head, and if I'm listening to a song and all of a sudden I'm hearing something really, really cool on the radio, I'd be like, oh man, if that just, that had some extra hats in there, or that had like, they hadn't like, broke it down there, and they just, or, they did something that was, this, when I hear a piece of music or somebody else's music, for a lot of times, I'm always like filling that stuff in. So a lot of inspiration that I get from music tends to be, I'll listen to something and then I'll be like, oh, I want this to sound like this instead. And my brain just kind of kicks into high gear, and then I start working on a piece. So, hey, Florine, how are you tonight? So one of the things that I like doing, and it's sometimes part of the process, sometimes it's not. Do I ever adjust people's EQ settings in the car? No. Well, all right. No, yeah, that's totally true. There's plenty of times where I've heard something in the car and I go and change it, and then I come back and Tiger Eyes is like messed with the bass and the treble again. But one of the getting back to the question, one of the things that I use is part of the creative, not always the creative process. I just like kind of playing around with different things until I hear something that sounds good. So it is totally going with the flow, I guess. But I do get the inspiration from hearing different things and kind of wrapping things around that. One of the places that I use a lot, it's splice.com. And if you've never tried it out, basically it's I'm sure you've seen somewhere where you can buy loops and stuff like that. DJs use them a lot. Some producers, even myself included, use some of the stuff on different sites that sell packages of it. The nice thing about Splice I've used them for quite a while now, is that it's so searchable. It's almost like the Google of sound, and you really, really have the ability to go in there, and I can say, give me a funky bass line, and I can find a whole bunch of bass lines that are funky. I don't have to go to a funk album or a funk, pack and like weed through all this stuff, or buy it and hope that it's got something that I like. I can actually sample all the individual sounds and find ones that I like. And what makes that so powerful is that I can search things on key. I can search things on, BPM, different genres. So it really gives the ability for me, if I say to myself, boy, I could really, really use this little piece, and I need to find something that looks like that, right? So I go out to Splice a lot of times. The other cool thing about Splice is that if I'm just kind of in a creative mood and I'm feeling like playing around, I will go out there a lot of times and I'll just like listen to a bass line, or I'll listen to somebody's melody that's just in there, and a lot of times that ends up being inspiration for something that later on becomes a complete song. So the album's got like 10 songs on it, but if you could see, like I said, in my hard drive, you would see just gobs and gobs and gobs of all these like little partial files of where, I started with an idea and I started rolling with something that I said, nah, it wasn't quite what I was hoping. But that creative process of doing that, it's just like somebody that is, trying to write a song on a guitar or a piano or whatever, and they try a little bit and they're like, no, let's go a different direction. No, let's go this way. And for me, Ableton is really my instrument, so I use that a lot to really create music. And there's so many like, I do it by date. I put the dates in there, and there's so many dates that are in there where it's like a day or 2 days that I worked on something. And sometimes I go back and visit them, and I'm like, wow, these are kind of cool, but yeah, I can see why I kind of gave up on it. And I don't want to say gave up. That's probably not the right term. It's probably determined that song wasn't something that I was really like in love with. So I kind of said, thanks for the experience that you gave me, piece of music, and thank you. And then, I move on. But I like to save them, because going back through them, you're like, wow, I could see where I was going with this. Or, maybe even sometimes I go back and say, boy, I really would like to try this with something else now. So it's good to kind of save those things. That's my process, at least. What is the first step to creating the song? So I think Matricular, for me, the first step is that creativity. And that's why I do the creativity and coffee on like the Saturdays and Sundays early in the morning. I'll do them on one Saturday, or how big is my hard drive? You'll have to ask Tiger for that one. But yeah, that's why I like having that creativity and coffee. And for me, I like to get up early. I wish I could sleep more, but apparently I cannot sleep any more than like 6 hours, maybe 7, and then that's it. So for me, I get up in the morning. It ends up being that I get a couple of cups of coffee in me, and then I'm you're killing me. So I get some coffee, and then I just sit down in front of it, and I start playing with those different things and starting that creativity. But I think the first step there, really beyond the creativity, is kind of organizing your thoughts in a song, organizing where you need an entire piece of music to go, right? So you might start with a melody, you might start with a bass line, you might even start with, rhythms, drums and whatnot. But when you get to that point that you're like, I kind of have enough pieces here to put together some music, the next step is really kind of deciding where that music needs to go and what sort of direction. At least that's my process, and I'm sure other artists have different processes. But for me, when I'm producing something, I really have to say to myself, where do I need this to go? And for me, I usually use, where a song will start out with kind of an intro, you'll do a build up, there'll be one or two breakdowns, and then kind of the exit. But you need to kind of look at that and say, where are those different pieces going to fit in, and where am I going to put this melody, or where am I going to put this bass, and how that all works. So I think that's a big part of it, and for me, that's a creative process as well. That's really start to finish. You've got to start, and as you proceed with everything, it's one of those things where you change things up, and that's kind of how that goes. So yeah, that's kind of the first step for me. Like the hard disk, not the floppy drive. Nice, Tiger Eyes. All right, so what's our next question here? We've been going for about 20 minutes now, so that's not too bad. And if anybody has questions, I know Matricula is kind of running the questions here. Well, you know what? So, all right, Matricula, that's actually a great question. These are all great questions. And I feel really good about answering all these, by the way. So, I know that I've always had kind of this feeling for like funkier type music. I've always liked pianos in music. I've always liked horns. I've always liked electronic music and stuff like that. And I think, surprisingly enough, I think last night I figured out where a huge part of music inspiration has come from. I think a lot of the reason why I like electronic music definitely would be Depeche Mode. I think I've always loved the electronic edge and synth pop of Depeche Mode. It's always been one of those. It's always been one of those bands that I've really loved. But I think from the funkier side of things, of being able to I'm a huge Depeche Mode fan. Before digital music came around, I literally must have had, between all the box sets, probably close to like 50 or 60 CDs from Depeche Mode. It was crazy. But I've always liked their electronic side. But and this is the part that's going to be crazy, because I didn't even realize this until last night. So last night, Tiger Eyes likes to put on music for the dog when we leave. So she went ahead. So, all right, Tiger. So we'll answer that in a minute. But yeah, that's a good question. So Tiger likes to put on music for the dog. So we were going out last night. She turns on music, and there was an 80s song that was playing, and we went ahead and I got in the car and I was like, well, I haven't heard that in a while. So I turned on the whole album from the same group, and yeah, back in the 70s, it was kind of cutting edge Florine. Yeah, that's good stuff back then. All those old synthesizers. Oh, man, those were the days. But we got in the car, and I put the album on, and I'm listening to the whole album, and I totally nerded out in the car. I was like, jamming inside the car. I'm like kind of doing my own little dance thing. I'm totally in the groove. And the music had a really funky edge to it. It had pianos in it. It had trumpets in it. It was very electronic, and it was upbeat, which is really all the type of things that I try to put into my music, because I really liked it so much. So get ready for this. So the band, believe it or not, was Wham. So George Michael and Wham, and all of those songs that were, very electronic, very upbeat, very, all that music. And I listened to it in the car, and when we were listening to it on the way home, I'm like, oh my gosh, this has to have been one of the most major influences for me, like subconsciously. And it was just weird that last night we happened to be listening it. But yeah, I mean, I would probably say that Wham probably had a lot of inspiration, at least from the funkier side of things. And then, Depeche Mode was probably my other, I remember listening to Wham all the time when I was younger, and that was like 84, 86. So I was like 14 to 16 then. And then Depeche Mode, that came out like, they had some stuff in the 80s, and then, more into the 90s and that, and I love their stuff as well. So yeah, I think both of those groups were a huge inspiration, but the 80s had a lot of that, trumpets and piano in it, and I think that's where a lot of that inspiration comes from. So then Tiger Eyes asked why I chose what I did for the, I remember asking you if this was one of your songs and music you're playing, and you're like, no, it's not mine. Yeah. So, and Tiger Eyes, she's so sweet. I turned something on last night, and she goes, is this one of your songs? And I'm like, no, but I really appreciate the fact that you thought something I did was this good. And I guess I'm very modest about it, but, and I heard something earlier today where, they said that really that the hacks think they're great, and the people that are, somewhat okay are the ones that are always like modest and are always questioning if their stuff is good enough. And I definitely fall in that latter category. I'm constantly wondering if my stuff is good enough. And, I'll turn something on in the car, and Tiger is like, this yours? I'm like, no, I kind of wish it was. So I'm always very modest about that, and I'm always very appreciative that somebody enjoys listening to what I may have put together. So then, Tiger, as you were asking about the why I chose the picture on the album cover. So that's a good one. So I constantly think of myself as a Renaissance man. I really do a lot of different things. You know, I'm into technology. I'm into science. I'm into music. You know, I try very hard. You know, artistically. And matter of fact, if you the entire album cover I put together, I literally did not draw the brain. That was some old medical drawings that are, you know, out of copyright. But aside from that, you know, the rest of it I really put together myself, and, you know, learned how to do it in Photoshop and stuff like that. So I put that together. But I look at myself as always a Renaissance man. And when I was kind of and this is where the title of the album kind of came into, is when I was kind of trying to think of a name for what I wanted to call the album. You know, I was thinking like Renaissance Man or something like that. And I had looked, and there were some other albums that were like that. And polymath is another term for Renaissance Man. And I'd actually looked at that, and somebody else had an album that was named that. And I was like, you know, kind of reading the Wikipedia article, and it explained it as having learned much. And that's where the name of it came from. And then from there, you know, I was like, well, having learned much, you know, a brain, and that's kind of how that brain got on the cover there. So, and I'm actually going to be working on some art for some merchandise, so that way you'll be able to get like that brain, and I'm going to put some other stuff together to kind of make it look cool, and then I'll have that merchandise out there if anybody's ever interested in purchasing a shirt or something like that. But yeah, that's my next step. Oh, excuse me, is to put something like that together. So yeah, I so Matricula, I'm one of those people that put thought into like just tons of stuff. No, Crazy was not made in honor of Tiger Eyes. That was actually, it was one of the last songs actually produced on the album, and it was one that kind of fell together really quickly, and it was just one I started working on. And a lot of times when I start working on a particular song, it's like I get started on it, and then it's like I just have to keep jamming on it. I can't put it down. I can't stop, and it almost becomes obsessive. And you can ask Tiger Eyes. There's a lot of times when I get like into a song. When I get into a song, I'm like, I got to get it all out of my head. I got to get at least enough of it out of my head that, you know, it's all laid down, and I can kind of keep working on it. So, and it almost to a point that it's almost to the point that it could be, I don't want to say like an addiction, because it's not the right word, but there's been times where I have wanted so much to get music out of my head that, and you could ask Tiger Eyes, I come over to the computer, and I'll be here like 2 hours at a time, take a break for a half hour, 2 hours at a time, and I'll do that all weekend until it's out of my head. And you know, sometimes I feel like I probably should spend a little more time with someone, or with the family or whatnot. But sometimes I got to get it out of the head. But that doesn't happen very often. While I work on music, there's only maybe a handful of times that I just get that like feeling I've got to get it all out. Do I ever try to use visual images inspiration? Probably. I want to say probably not. I mean, at least if I did, it must have been subconsciously, because I've never thought to myself, you know, I wish I could, because and I've actually tried. There's been a couple of times where we've gone to parks and stuff like that, and I've brought the gear, and I'm like, you know, I'm just gonna like kind of hang out here and see if inspiration hits me, and it usually doesn't. What really does hit me though is when audibly I hear something. So I've tried it. I've just never been successful at visual images separation. I think for me, when I hear something that creates the images in my head, And Apophis is one of those songs for me that Apophis was one of those songs I had to get out of my head. And then it was also one of those songs that even when I listen to it now, and it's been complete for some time, even when I hear it now, I mean, I literally just feel the energy in that song. And I know that sounds so crazy because you're like, how does the music do that? And I'm like, I don't know, but I literally can like feel it and see it and hear it in my head when I hear that song. And it's weird. It's really weird. I don't know why that is, but for me, when there's a song like that, it just becomes so powerful in my head that I literally can like almost see it. You dancing crazy? No crazy dancing is inspiration. Oh, that's a good one. I love that. So what is the motivation for the Far Beyond? So that one was, again, just creativity, I think. What I started doing was one of the instruments that I use, which is called Vacuum Pro. It's really kind of this old school synthesizer, and I like kind of playing around with presets. I know there's a lot of people that are like, "Oh no, you got to do it all from the ground up." Man, to me that's just like elitist bullshit. Presets are great because it gets you right in the ballpark of something. Like, oh, I kind of like the song sound. I'd like it a little bit tweaked more. So then you kind of mess with your preset. For me, I love presets. I think they're great. Other people, you want to spend hours, creating your own sound. Great. I, am more of the just kind of get it going and, go from there. So what I did is I was going through the presets and it was all just, having fun. And I was on the keyboard, and when I was playing on the keyboard, I noticed that if I hit the keyboard in like, certain sequences, the way that the ARP sound made was like slightly different. So I started playing with that a little bit more and a little bit more. And a matter of fact, all that like, all the arpeggio and the entire song is actually driven from me playing on the keyboard. It's not like drawn in or anything else. So, I know a lot of producers that are, play the music or put the music in, they'll go ahead and, draw it in, Ableton or Fruity Loops or whatever they're using. But literally that was all played. And I was just kind of playing with it at first, and I kind of got like a jam going a little bit, and I'm like, wow, I really kind of like this. And then after I did that, then what I did was it was a matter of I just turned on the recorder. I started recording me doing that little bit of jam, and I got it to where I wanted. And then at that point, I took the recording and just chopped it up from there to put it in the song the way that I wanted to hear it. So yeah, that's how that one started. It was the motivation was kind of the creativity and geeking out really more than anything else, because when I was doing that, I was totally geeking out. It was just like, oh, this is so cool, it sounds so great. And that's what I was doing. That's how that one. Hi, random girl singing. Thank you for the host there. I appreciate that. All right, so what's our next question there? We need to start using Ableton, and what I used before that. So, I want to say about 3 or 4 years ago, I got a copy of Ableton, and that's when I started using that. And then prior to that, I was using Fruity Loops. So Fruity Loops was. Yeah, thank you so much, Steph. I totally appreciate that. Yeah, we're just kind of talking about the different album and the process and everything and a lot of the production stuff. So, and I was mentioning earlier, you and I were kind of talking about it a little bit, and then Matricula and I were talking about it a little bit. So I thought, I'll just let people ask some questions about how it got produced and everything else, and Steph, if you want to do something later on, I'd love to get together with you and talk about, production stuff again too. So, and what are other loop softwares? Oh, there's so many. So I don't really call it loop software. It's all music production software. They're all DAWs or digital audio workstations. And there's so many out there. You can loop anything, through there. Ableton's got a looper in it. No worries, stuff. Hey, I have had 4 kids. I can totally relate. So they are just so full of energy. I totally understand that. Back to the DAW question. So I used Ableton for maybe about 4 years now. And I think I'd gotten 9 shortly, maybe after it came out. It was like 8 and 9 was like kind of going back and forth. And I had picked up a copy of 9 and I started using it. And I had an old crappy keyboard from like 10 years ago and it worked just awful. And then my daughter had an old keyboard, which was not much better, but I got a little MIDI jack for it. And I had that plugged into Ableton. And I was really starting to get some headway. And then after that, I'm like, all right, this is it. I got to get some like decent equipment. So then that's where I started getting stuff for Ableton, the other equipment that I've got here, and the DJ stuff that we did kind of supported that habit. So then, let me see. So other DAWs that are out there, they all do the same thing. They really do. I mean, at the end of the day, somebody's going to be like, oh, this one's great for this and great for that. But really, at the end of the day, it's all the technique that you use, right? It's knowing how to like EQ something. It's knowing how to use a compressor. It's knowing how to use all those different pieces in it to put it together. And at the end of the day, the arrangement view and the way to arrange stuff really becomes like the most trivial part of everything. Whether or not I arrange something in Ableton or I do it in Fruity Loops or whatever, it all comes down to like a tool that you're comfortable with. And then, a tool that works for your workflow. And for some people, there's different workflows. I know that like in Fruity Loops, their piano roll editor is totally badass. And I wish Ableton had a piano roll editor that was, as good that you can cut and slice like you can in Fruity Loops. Unfortunately, it is what it is. But there's other things in Ableton that I really, really love. And I use that. And I think the other part of it is the instruments, right? So a lot of people, may use the default Ableton instruments. I'm one of those people that I prefer using a lot of the VSTs and using different instruments that I think I like and I'm more comfortable with. And I think that's what helps me kind of develop the sound that I've got. So I think people put too much into DAWs. I think they become, kind of like a Windows versus Mac. And I don't think it needs to be that way. I think anybody that's been doing this for long enough realizes that it's just a tool in the toolbox and it's not as important as, understanding the music and the process. So that's kind of my take on the DAW thing and the different loop software. But yeah, it's more of a DAW than loop software. I mean, there's like inside Ableton, there's a looper. So if I was playing a guitar or something like that, I'd be able to loop inside of it. But yeah, it's not so specifically loop, software to just do that. There is some software out there that does that, especially for, live musicians and stuff like that. But Ableton and that is more designed, and you can use it as a loop software. You can use Ableton to do clips and live performance. And I've dabbled with that a little bit. I've not, worked on that as much as I'd like. It's something I actually think would be a lot of fun to learn a little bit more and work on a little bit more. But yeah, that's kind of cool. So what's our next one there, Matricula? These are all really good questions. Curtis, what was my favorite question so far? Yeah, so there's my favorite question. Who's my favorite viewer and why is it Curtis? Yeah, nice, Curtis. I'm not going to play favorites on viewers. I love all you guys. I love all of you. That question was awesome, Curtis. I can say that's my favorite question so far. But all kidding aside, all the viewers and all you guys hanging out with me and just hanging out and having fun. You guys all mean the world to me. You really do. It's really great that you guys take time out of your day to spend time with me. That's really cool. Can I tell the question? So, Curtis, it was actually kind of funny you mentioned that. So, I know I asked everybody to kind of put questions in or at least run them through. I run them through Matricula, so I started peeking at a couple of the questions because I was like, well, maybe I kind of see if there's anything like really, really complex in some of these questions. And I started working on reading it. And I read like part of one, or I read one of them, the ones that you had obviously submitted, and I started laughing. And I thought they were good questions. I said, Matricula, I don't want to see these. I don't want to read them. I'm like, you're the one that's going to be running the questions. So go ahead and just ask them, because I would rather be surprised. Let me see. Would I ever use a Twitch viewer's saxophone solo in a song? Absolutely, I would. I absolutely would. And I've talked about this on stream before. There are so many talented people out on Twitch. And I know what makes it difficult is I've actually reached out to quite a number of people on Twitch, and I get all kinds of responses with people that say, yeah, I totally want to work on something. Yeah, I'd love to do that. And then when I reach out and be like, okay, well, I kind of want to work on this now, so you have some time to do this, I get a lot of, and not everybody, I've had other people, put the work in and say, yeah, no problem, I'll get that over to you. But I've had a lot of people that say, yeah, I totally want to do it, but then when I reach out, it turns into, well, I don't have time, let me try like later on. And I totally get that people are busy and they've got their own streams to run and other things to do. I absolutely totally get that and totally respect it and don't fault anybody for it. But while I would be totally down for using a viewer's saxophone solo in a song, that they got to be able to send it to me. If they can do that, then absolutely, I would love to do that. That's tons of fun. I think for me, when I'm producing, there are a couple of different studio musicians that basically I'll use because I clearly can't play the guitar like you've heard in some of the music. And there are some studio musicians that I would use for that. And they're great to work with. I love it. It's such a rewarding process because I give them some music and I'm like, okay, can you put a jam in right here? And then, they put a jam in and they're like, man, I'm like, oh, could you just make it sound like this? And, they take it back and they do it again. And I'm like, man, this is perfect. And then, I chop it up. And then, they listen to the track afterwards and like, holy cow, I can't believe you chopped it up and made it sound like that. I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what I wanted. So it's a really, really rewarding process. So yeah, absolutely. I would love to use somebody's saxophone solo or any of that. Yeah. So yes, I play the keyboard. I don't want to say I play very well. I mean, there's so many streamers out there that are just, Piano Improv Man, Doc Bizzle, people that really, really play piano well. I play it probably well enough to get my music out, but I try to say that really my instrument is the DAW, and the digital audio workstation is really my instrument. It's 100% electronic instrument, but yes, I use a lot of different things actually. I try to play the keyboard, and I don't think I do terrible. I get better at it all the time. I'm always practicing, but that's any craft, right? You're constantly practicing. So I'm constantly practicing the keyboard, constantly practicing music theory. I've got, things like my LPD-8 here, which is, drum pads. My, piano's also got, drum pads on it. I've done, practice on figure drumming. I've also got a sequencer here. So I use all those different pieces. And when I use those different pieces and put them together, that's really all of my instrument. But yeah, I would like to learn guitar, but I think my carpal tunnel. I played Guitar Hero a lot, and I loved the game. I really did. And everybody that plays guitar is like, oh, that's nowhere close to like, a real guitar. And I thought for a while about like getting Rocksmith and that, but I think I'm most concerned. Typing for a living and all that. I was always concerned that my carpal tunnel would get really bad because it used to get bad with Guitar Hero, and I'd have to stop playing and bum me out. So I've wanted to play the guitar, but I think that it would not be so good for my carpal tunnel. So define. He plays the car keys. That's funny. So yeah, it's let's shake them like a tambourine. We went to Guitar Center and they had the little little shakers, the shakers, and they had some fruit ones there. And Tiger Eyes was like all over it. She's like, "We need these." I'm like, "For what?" If I could make love to one of my songs, which one would it be? Mine would be Curvature. Curvature is kind of like the little egg shakers. Yeah, except they were fruit. Curvature is an interesting song. It was one of those songs that I like the Rhodes in it so much. It's just got so much funk to it. Gosh, that's a tough question. I don't know that I could make love to any of the songs, but I would say probably my two favorites on the album would be Crazy and Apophis. Those were both two of the songs that I just had to get out of my brain. And, for me, it was completely obsessive for both of those. And like I said, it doesn't happen often. I think Apophis for me just had so much feeling in it for me. And then the other one that I think was like Crazy because it's just fun. It's upbeat. It's got all the different elements that I really love. So, and that's why Crazy is on the. If you look on Bandcamp, that's why that one's the sample song, if you will. Sorry. That's why that one's a sample song. Because I really did love that song a lot. So that's probably one of my favorites. Well, that and Apophis are probably the two on the album that are my very favorites. So yeah, I guess it's got to be a threesome then. So all right. So what's I love these questions. If I can make love to a song. And it's interesting to hear. I love listening to people that like the different songs. To me, that is so cool. Who would be your Avalanche dream collaborator from Twitch? Dream collaborator? I don't know that I have a dream collaborator. Wow, that's a tough question because you know what? If I had to collaborate with someone on Twitch, I would need to pick somebody that has multiple instrument skills, but then that's not fair to really pick one because I think all of them. Yeah, no doubt. It's so hard to pick one, right? I mean, it's just, I don't know that I could. I really don't know that I could pick just one because there's just, Bernie's awesome at the piano, but I personally, and I mean, I've watched the stream from time to time. I've never seen him play the guitar. So, then there's other people that play both instruments. Corey from Two Guys One Couch. I've seen him play. He plays piano and guitar. Random Girl Singing. She plays piano and guitar. So for me, I think that I like the fact that people have different disciplines in music and can play different instruments. I mean, I don't want to say I'm jealous. I'm very and envious is not a word either. I'm very taken back. I'm very taken back by people that are able to play multiple instruments so well. It's very, for me, it's very impressive, and I'm like, that's so cool that you have that ability. I think probably, and I'm guessing, I think a lot of their ability comes from being able to play music by ear or decompose music by ear, which is something I've worked on almost daily for over a year now, and it really does make a difference in your music by being able to listen and play things by ear, and that's why like Piano Improv Man Bernie, he's like so good, is that he's got that ear. Jonathan, he's really good too. He's got that ear, and I'm pretty sure Random Girl Singing also plays most of her stuff by ear as well. So the inspiration to make the album was really that inspiration really just kind of came from me and my passion for music. I've always loved putting music together, and I just got to the point that I said, I have to do this in my life. I have to produce more than just a few singles here and there. I said to myself, I absolutely have to produce an entire album, and that's what I did. It's funny because when you start doing something like that, you're like, well, I've produced a song and it's only taken, maybe a month or whatever. But, after a while, it's like, you think, well, I'll probably have this album like wrapped up in a couple of months. And that was so much harder than it was. It was like every day a little bit. Every day a little bit. And, Tiger Eyes we'll watch a movie or something like that and do that. But I like being busy. I'm just one of those people I've constantly, I'll work myself to death, for sure. But I'm always like busy, doing stuff. So for me, it was like, I was busy making music a little bit every day. And, I would say to myself, oh, I'll have this done like tomorrow. And it would never be that way. It was just every day. And loving it, right? I mean, it never felt like work. It was work, but it never felt like, like I was making burgers, it was always something I loved doing, and I love cooking. So, for me, that it's all creative. Is your passion for music bigger than your passion for food? Oh, yeah, so that's actually kind of an interesting question. I have loved to cook for years, and cooking and music are kind of those, I guess, those same type of things. They're creative. I Smoker, I honestly, that, metal or dubstep, it's what means something to you. I mean, it's really what your music means to you. If you feel like it should be metal, do metal. If you feel it should be dubstep, do dubstep. Do it for you. Don't do it for you. If you're approaching music from the aspect of like, I think if you're going to do it professionally, you absolutely have to approach it from, the money making perspective of, how am I going to support myself with my music? I think you have to look at it that way. But your music also should be something that you're being creative and love. I mean, if you're just doing it to do it, just me, but I don't think you'll ever be really happy doing music that way. how I define deep house. So I don't know, the deep house sound. I mean, it is a little bit more laid back and chilled, but I define it as really it's got that house beat, but it is a little bit more. I don't know. I mean, I it's probably easier for me to point out Matricula. Somebody like Miguel Miggs, and if you've not heard Miguel Miggs, definitely go listen to him. I think he defines the genre really, really, really well. But yeah, he's one of my favorite deep house artists and producers out there. His stuff is really, really good. I mean, if you've not heard of Miguel Miggs, definitely go check it out. Hey, DJ Lovehouse, how are you? You can't decide if you like guitar better than making your badass meatloaf. So I like a good meatloaf. Yeah, I can't complain about a good meatloaf. Yeah, yeah. Man, I tell you, I've always loved listening to his stuff. A matter of fact, Miguel's stuff is one of those things. So when I'm like need to get some work done, and I don't mean music work, I mean like the day job, right? I like turning his stuff on because it's it's house music, so it's very upbeat, but it's got just some great mellow tones in it, and it's great to listen to. For me, I can just turn that on and go to work and that. So yeah, Miguel is I love that, and yeah, that's good stuff. That is very, very good stuff. Roger Sanchez, I have not listened to it. Matter of fact, if it's like Miguel Miggs, I would love to listen to it. Matter of fact, I'll look back later and give it a listen. But yeah, there's just so much. See, that's one of the things about music. There's so much out there. It's like, yeah, San Francisco sauce. Yeah, yeah, the California deep house stuff. That is like really, really good stuff. Um, but yeah, that's the thing about music. It's like it's that curation of trying to find out. Um, you know, well, that's awesome, man. Well, put your. I don't know if the bot are probably if you put the link out there to like Tigerize or Matricula, they can shout you out. Do you stream as well, DJ Lovehouse, or you just view? Because if you stream, we'd definitely shout you out. I'll give you a follow as well. Yeah. Nice. Producing DJ in China. Nice. Oh, there we go. So the bot didn't get you. Awesome. Yeah, I'll have to follow it and check it out. So you're going to be streaming too? Very, very cool. Very cool. Let me, yeah. Oh, we're all about, oops, that's not the right one. I don't want to ban or purge. I wanted to follow. There we go. Yeah, no, I definitely want to follow you. I'll check it out if you're on and I'm not on. Yeah. Oh, Tigerist. Oh no, I'm sorry. DJ Lovehouse. Oh, thank you so much for those bits. Thank you. Oh my gosh. I saw Tigerist up here on the one thing, and then you were right afterwards. So yeah. So thank you for those bits. Awesome. Yeah, follow party. Yeah, give them a follow. I will definitely go check it out. That is so awesome. And thank you again for the follow as well. So, Matricula, do we got the... Matricula, thank you for the bit as well. Hype bit! That's awesome. Yeah, no, that's totally cool. I'll check out your sound. Matter of fact, let me do that before I... you're on Mixcloud? Are you on SoundCloud too? Are you producing stuff as well? I know I've got a thing. I haven't really updated my Mixcloud in some time, so. All right, so I've got you in here. All right, so I'm following you on Mixcloud too, so I'll check it out later. I'll definitely. Yeah, no, I'm totally willing to check it out. I love checking stuff out. And matter of fact, uh, tomorrow when I go to work, I'll turn it on in the background because you know, that's stuff I like to do, man. All right, so Matricular, we got the next one. Why is music theory so hard to understand? Truth from Gandalf. So, okay, so I'm going to let you guys all in on at least a secret for me. And wow. So, music theory, right? Okay, so I'm going to agree with everybody that I originally thought music theory was like, it's like going to Hogwarts and trying to learn all the spells, right? I mean, a lot of music theory is just like it's just like hard math. I mean, this is this and this is that. And if you've ever like tried to learn, different music theory, circle of fifths, stuff like that, I mean, it's a daunting task. And I mean, right, that you've got to learn the music theory in order to like put together music that sounds really, really good. And boy, I'm going to hopefully give you guys something here that for me changed completely my theory or my feeling on music theory. And I don't get paid for this endorsement or anything else, but I'm going to share this because, for me, it was a huge, huge thing. So I want to say that the probably the biggest thing that changed for me, not only the sound of music that I'm producing, the type of music that I put together and how I put it together, is ear training. And when you think of ear training, lots of people take ear training from a standpoint of like, they listen to a note, they try to like guess what that note is. And that's kind of what's called perfect pitch. And it's like impossible. And you either have perfect pitch or you don't. So there's actually, and you can look him up on YouTube. His name is Julian Bradley, and he has different videos, and it's called The Musical Ear. And he's actually got a course that you can take, and he teaches ear training, but he teaches relative ear training. And beyond the ear training of learning the notes, being able to hear the notes, he tells you how to basically transpose music. So how things like the pentatonic scale and stuff like that is so used in modern pop music and things like that, and even electronic music, how those things are used and how they are put together, and how if you listen to something and you use a few techniques, you can basically take most music, not all of it, most music, and get like that close. And you can get that close with just, and you don't even need an instrument. Literally, you can do it in your head. You can do it in your head. You hear the music, right? And you can actually transpose the music in your head and not even be in front of your instrument. Then you can go to your instrument and prove that theory. And when I saw his like original videos, which rightfully so were the marketing ones, right? And he's like, it's this and it's that. When I went through those different things, and before I'd started the course, I had really like watched it, and I was like, wow. His story was kind of a lot like mine. And I'm like, maybe there's something to it. So I went ahead, I did the course. And the stuff that he teaches was like so impressive and so changing. I mean, it like literally took it from like here to like here. And it did it, it wasn't overnight, but it was so impactful. I don't think music theory anymore, because there's a lot of music theory that was put into it. I mean, music theory is one of those things like, you learn so much, but you can learn so much more and so much more and so much more. And I think a lot of music theory is taught from, okay, here's this, memorize that. His approach was really, hey, Florine, take it easy. Thank you. Thank you so much for stopping by. But his stuff is so much more of the, here's a piece of music. Here's the tricks to transposing the music. Here's the type of things they do in the music. And he does, he's got this whole jazz tutorial thing and everything else. I mean, the guy is, very, very brilliant. I think he's got I think he's got like a PhD or something. I'd have to like look for sure. But the guy is really, really smart. And when I went through the stuff, I was like, wow, it just it just seemed to like work really well. So that's the website. But I don't think musical theory is as daunting anymore after I went ahead and watched that or did that. Now it's more of just, I hear the rest of the theory now, and as I go through the theory, I'm like, oh, I totally get this now. I know how all this stuff works. So I don't think music theory is hard if you've got a teacher that gives you the information that you need in a way that you understand it. And for each person, that's going to be different. But gosh, I did think a lot of music theory was hard, and I can't tell you how many things I had watched or read and been like, wow, this is, insanely tough. And it was really the presentation. Once I got someone that could explain it at the level that I was able to hear and understand, it made a huge difference. And the cool thing is that, I can actually transpose music that I hear now. So if there's a particular sound or a beat or something else that or not a beat, but a particular melody or a bass line or something like that, I can hear that now and be like, oh, I see what they did here, and I kind of liked what they did, and I kind of use something like that and mix it and make it my own. So, but yeah, that's really cool stuff. But that's actually a really good question, and hopefully someone else can get some use out of that. But I would say, and I've heard other producers say it as well, ear training is so important. It really, really is important. And I totally agree. I think it's a very, very important thing. What do we got next on the list here? And if anybody else has questions, please, we can work with Matricula as well, but please shout them out. I'm more than glad to answer anything that I can. I know we haven't really talked. I know we've talked a lot about just kind of creativity and process here, but we can also talk about other portions of it. Yeah, and that's still something I struggle with, at least from the key perspective. I can transpose it down to a particular key, but it gets harder when you're trying to transpose it necessarily to the same key. But it's that clears the list. Yeah. Some of the tracks in Ableton, sure. So I can do that. I did actually load up Ableton. So I'll ask everybody there, which track would you guys like to see in Ableton? That would be probably the best way to approach it, is which ones are you guys interested in? Or was there something in a particular? Yeah, I had Ableton. I don't have the dual screen running like I would for the weekend, because I wanted to be able to. So it varies. So we'll start with let's start with Crazy. I think that was the Space Strippers. Well, we got Crazy up first. I can bring up Far Beyond. There it is. So I think you're asking how I kind of have the the setup here. So um, the way I've got it set up is my audio interface is what's actually going into the audio interface, and the microphone are actually what's going into. That's what you're hearing me talk on. Ableton can use the audio interface. I don't use it for the audio interface when I'm streaming, just obviously for the conflict of it. Yeah, so for streaming, I use the audio interface for streaming for the input, and then for Ableton, I just have it actually just run out through the PC. So it's just basically like desktop audio capture. Yeah, there's lots of different ways that you can do it. A lot of people, they go ahead and use virtual mixers and routers and that. And honestly, being somebody that's worked in IT for a very long time, I try to stay away from a lot of device drivers and stuff. That's the kind of stuff that just F's your PC in a heartbeat. So here's kind of, when you break down all the pieces, so this one is Far Beyond. So that's this one here, Matricula. Yeah, so on the Mac, I've never actually streamed off of it, but yeah, your best bet's probably an audio interface. I know Doc tried it on the Mac for a long time, and so did Random Girl Singing. Man, I love my Mac at work, and I will be the first one to admit that I do enjoy a Mac, but with the PC equipment, it's just, from a production standpoint, way more power, way easier to stream, everything else, and it's cheaper. And I couldn't even touch it with. So the colors are all definable, Matricula. You can actually go in here and I can just pick the palette of the color that I want. So what I do a lot of times is when I'm working with music, I try to categorize a lot of it visually. So that way when you're like working on particular music, it's got the different colors here to kind of categorize different items. So like all the different like effects sounds that I put in here, those are all, purple. The bass line that's in here. So, I try to color them. Sometimes it's just Fruit Loops, but I do try to put that in there. And then that's basically it. And then, you've got all the different tracks down here. And this actually is Vacuum Pro, which I was talking about earlier. This is actually one of my favorite synthesizers because it's got a very warm feel to it. As far as it's supposed to be designed on like vacuum tubes, or at least that's how they. Thanks, DJ Lovehouse. And for for reference, I'm not sure if you know, but I did grow up basically right outside of Chicago, and I live like 70 miles outside Chicago right now. But I grew up all in that area and everything else. So yeah, I'm sure that again subconsciously plays a big part into anything I put together. But yeah, so this was that Vacuum Pro. It's really cool. You get a lot of warm sounds out of it. It's just really, really great stuff. And there's just so many different, knobs in that you can sit here and tweak as a synthesizer. And, it's got, phaser, chorus, and all kinds of stuff in here. And you can just, chain the crap out of it, and it's a lot of fun. So that's that one's Far Beyond. Let's see, what other one what was the other one? So, Matricula, you haven't mentioned. Which one was your kind of favorite off the album? And I'll be more than glad to bring that up and show you how that one was put together. And for anybody that, I don't know if you checked it out, DJ Love House, but that was what was released 2 days ago, and tonight went out to digital distribution. So, yeah, she said be right back. So, but yeah, if there's another one that anybody else has like listened to and they're kind of curious what it looks like, I'm more than glad to kind of go over it. One of the things on my music production nights is that, besides working on actual music and working on something that I'm working on, I definitely like talking about it. So if there's different things that people are interested in, I'm more than willing to go over like how things are done or how I did things. And it's all different for everybody, right? I mean, everybody has their own sound. Add you to the mailing list. Yeah, I'll add you, man. I'll have to put that in the thing, but yeah, sure. I think it's like right on my, and if you can go to my website, which is just robertmech.com, and but yeah, I popped you in there. Cool. Well, glad you're enjoying things. But no, that's awesome, DJ Lovehouse. Yeah, certainly come and hang out. But yeah, we so when I'm working on different music and that, I like to do it on stream because it's just great to have people come out and hang out. I think one of the most challenging songs on the entire album, not from a composition sound standpoint, but from a sound standpoint, and it was really, it's one of those songs that I think more people are happier with than I am. Is Mercury, and I know that like Gandalf and a lot of other people like Mercury, and for me sonically, listening to the song, I don't want to say the behind the music stuff. Yeah, it's one of the reasons why I do this is like, I want to have the behind the scenes, if you will, but sonically Mercury. So Mercury was picked just because I think at the time there was something. I think it was something related to like Cassini was like around, and I was reading something on Mercury, and it just sounded like that kind of a song. But that's how I picked those that title in this one. But like this one sonically was probably the most challenging song, and I don't want to say I'm unhappy with it because I am not unhappy with the song. But it's like I every time I listen to it, I'm like, I could just tweak it again and again and again. And I know that a lot of people like the song, so I stopped tweaking it. But it's like it wasn't that I was unhappy because I liked the song. It's just I just couldn't quite master the particular part of the tones that I wanted in it. Why is that so low? Do I have the on here? Oh, it's on. What the heck? Oh no, why is that band on? That doesn't belong on. There we go. So this song, and because of the kind of the alternating bass line that's in this one, it makes this particular one just was tremendously challenging. And what's okay? So a little bit of interesting stuff. So this guitar line, and it's funny you bring this up. So it's not an actual guitar, believe it or not. That actually play. It sounds like a guitar because it's amped like one. So this actually uses a Korg wave station, and it's a let me see. Let me turn the amp off on it. So that's the unamped version. And then I turn the amp back on. So that sounds like a guitar, but it's actually not. This was not one of the ones where I had used a studio guitarist. This was one of the ones where I did it on basically the keyboard. So it's actually. So yeah, that's all done with just synthesizers. There's no actual guitar there. Now there are other ones. Let's bring up. Yeah, so it was a bit of trickery, and but yes, as soon as you turn that amp on, it sounds like a regular guitar. And really, I mean, when you think about it, a guitar and a piano, for the most part, are basically just stringed instruments anyhow. It's just the way that it's amped through a guitar that, gives it that guitar sound. It's not one of, it's not some amazing, crazy weird science. I think the playing of the guitar turns out a little bit different, because when somebody's playing a guitar, you get the human edge to it, and it's a little bit different than when you're playing it through, or just recreating it through, a synthesizer. So now this track here actually uses a studio guitarist then for. So that actually makes a huge difference. Now, when the guitarist actually does the recording on this one for me, he does not amp the guitar. I actually request that they don't amp the guitar, and the reason why is so that way I can run it through whichever kind of amplifier rack I want to run it through, which actually works really good. So if I turn this off here, and you can actually, and we'll turn off the amplifier. Yep. So it's completely dry. So you're hearing it. Yeah. So that's exactly why I request it that way, is so that way I'm getting it completely. Just somebody playing the guitar, but then I've got 100% control on how I want it amped. So depending on the amp that I want to use, and these are all I forget the name of the place, but they do all the. These are all like a whole package of amps and that you're able to just basically get, but all these different amplifiers you can put together, and I can make whichever one I want. So if I want one particular sound or another, I just run it through the amplifier that I want. And sometimes I'll run through 5 or 6 amplifiers, and it's actually really cool, because you can't, for somebody to go out and buy a bunch of these amplifiers and try to formulate their sound, it's very, very difficult. For me, I'm just able to whip through a dozen different amplifiers in 10 minutes or whatever, and go, hey, this is the one that I want, and it sounds perfect. So yeah, that's kind of how I do it. I really prefer they do send it dry, because if it's amped, it's their sound. If I amp it, it's my sound. So that makes a huge difference when I'm producing something and how I'm putting it together for my particular sound. Now, usually when I send it out, I'm like, here's the music. I may give them, like you heard in of the other song, you may hear it where I've got a guitar in there and I'm not real happy with it, and I've even like gotten one. I'll like pull something even off of like Splice, just a loop of a particular guitar sound, and throw it in there because I know I want a guitar there. And then that's when I'll work with a studio guitarist, and I'll go ahead and actually do the guitar piece of it, and I'll be like, maybe I want this a little different or a little bit like that. And they're really, really great of working together to be able to put something that at least in the composition of everything. Fun fact, I did software development and software engineering for probably the better part of 20 years. So I'm so used to getting at a granular level for everything. That's how I look at everything when I'm putting together pieces of music. I have to look at it at that detail level, because for me, I want to hear every single piece. I want to hear every single little detail, and to me it's got to sound right. And that's why I said earlier tonight, my hard drive is literally filled with all this stuff that I started, and it never sounded right. So it would be one of those things where I would go back and say, well, it's not what I want, and start a new song. So yeah, it definitely gets granular. So what other song do you want to see? I've got all the ones off the album, obviously. But see, here's one of these, so to give you an idea, this is like one of those things where I start working on something, and sometimes they sound great and sometimes they don't. Matter of fact, I was working on something last night that was very much the same type of thing. Hey, this is where I was just messing around. And this was just playing around one night. And see, for me in the creative process, if this was something that I wanted to proceed with, I would have eventually sent this bass out, because I know it sounds sort of close, but not exactly what I wanted. So I would have probably reworked this bass. Here is what so for me, I always have to have somewhere in there that kind of funky sound. It's for whatever reason, it's a sound I can't get rid of. See, now in this particular case, I haven't even gotten this one to composition mode yet. This was just some clips I was playing with the other night. So that was one I was actually playing with last night. And that one I'm still kind of hooked on, so I may end up playing with that one a little bit more. But yeah, that's kind of the way that my creative process works for that, at least. But I mean, these are all different ones. Apophis, that's another one. All just different ones. So, is anybody else got any other questions? I mean, I'm like I said, I'm really glad that everybody's been so interested tonight in this. Was there any questions on how any of the publishing works? Because I tell you that the publishing side of things is another a whole phase of independence. So I worked on Apophis right after I worked on Mercury. And I was I was kind of a space theme going on or something. And I'm I kind of want something that's like Mercury. So I went ahead and ask away. So I went ahead and was kind of space theme, and I was what would be cool is an asteroid. So if you Google it, you can look up you can actually look up Apophis. It's actually a large asteroid that had come close to the planet Earth. Not hitting us, of course. I like Bandcamp. I think it's a huge opportunity. So, I don't know. From a publishing standpoint, I think everybody should publish their music. I mean, I think if you spend the time to create it and you spend the time to produce it, so there's a couple pieces, right? So if you're putting your music together and you're just doing a song and your song is maybe you spent a little bit of time on it, you wrote it down, you can repeat it, and it's something that you've wrote. The next step is really producing it, right? Getting it into a format that sounds good, and it really does sound more professional, right? Then the next step after that is getting it out there so people can listen to it. And I think, and it's just my opinion, of course, I think everybody should publish any music that they're working on, that they put together and called it, something they're proud of, right? So for me, I worked on this album for a year and a half. It is a huge chunk of my life. I put this together. It sounds professional. I mean, if you listen to it, it sounds acoustically like, other professional music. So from my perspective, and I guess I'll say it, it is professional music. I mean, it is music that is put together just as professionally as anyone else. And as a matter of fact, in some cases, put together more professionally than other music that's out there. Put it together, and I shipped it out. And the reason why I feel that if you're writing music and you're putting it together and you want to make something that, I mean, if it's good enough that you put it on Bandcamp and you say to yourself, people, world, if you like this music, pay for it. I think you should take it a step further. I think you should take the music and publish it at least to all the different digital download services like Spotify, digital distribution. And the reason why I feel that, and again, opinion, right? You put your music together, and if you put it just on Bandcamp, you're capturing like this many people, right? And you can send as many as your friends, or there's going to be some organic people that are going to run across your music, and they're going to discover it, and they're going to say to themselves, "Oh, this is great stuff." They may or may not buy it, right? And I think that's really one of the driving reasons behind pushing it out to digital distribution. Now, there are all kinds of people out there that will tell you, iTunes has all this music in there that people have never even listened to once. It all exists in iTunes. They push it out and never gets exposure. But what I can tell you, and I did this with my singles. There's a singles Spotify and that you can go to and listen. And I want to push more of them out there, but I've been focused on the album. Now that that's out, there's a whole bunch of other stuff that's kind of freed my time up to do other things. But the ability of digital distribution is to get your music out there to people that are going to run across it on random radio station channels, related music, all these different opportunities. And I can tell you right now that even just a couple of singles, I get royalties almost every single month. Not a lot. It's only pennies, or half a penny or whatever. But you're getting it out to people and they're hearing it. I can publish something on Bandcamp and, sure, I'm going to get some people to listen to it. But if I get it out to digital distribution, I know other people are getting it, and they're getting it worldwide. I don't know if some guy in, Taiwan or whatever is going to hear this song and be like, wow, this is the best song I've ever heard, and suddenly go viral. I mean, YouTube is like full of that kind of stuff, right? Some or Vine video or whatever, somebody does something and it suddenly goes viral because it meant something to them. So for me, I think digital distribution just gives you that opportunity to push it out there. And then somebody likes it, you get 1 million plays, well, then, you're making some money. But, to me, it's just about exposure. Yeah, there's so many different ones. So, uh, yeah, DJ Lovehouse, you got that so right there. So, it depends if you just want to be out there, if you want to bring up a following, or if you want to be in a repertoire of some label. It does, those are all different goals, and I think, it depends on how you want to run your music. For me, I think that I like the fact that it's completely independent for me, and that I can publish it out there, and I can send it and say, here you are. I have the ability to be my own patron, and not everybody has that ability, but I think that for a lot of artists that does mean something, right? And what do I mean by being my own patron? So, if you think of people that commission artists to work and hone their craft, right? So I want to commission an artist. I'd like you to work on this for me. I know that you're kind of, newer, you're kind of, still holding your craft, but I want to pay you some money to go ahead and commission you to do this work, right? And I kind of look at it as I commission myself. I work a regular job, and that regular job pays my bills, pays my electricity and everything else. So I have the luxury of basically being my own patron, to say, Rob, you can work on this. You've got time that you can sit here and work on your music and perfect it and make it better and make it the sound that you want it to sound. So, at the end of the day, then I can take that music and I can push it out, and then I'm able to not only hone that craft, but then take that craft and send it out to everyone else and say, here, this is my Da Vinci, this is my all of my different art that I've put together. And then, for me, that is a big piece, so that's why I kind of publish independently. Now, how hard of an expensive it is it? So talked about it a little bit earlier. There's a lot of different companies that do it, and DJ Lovehouse, you really hit on it. The Beatport, DistroKid, all these different items that are out there. I use CD Baby, and I use it only, and I don't want to say they're great, because I'm not. There's a lot of stuff on their site, and that I'm like, oh, this is really cheeseball. Other items that are great, don't get me wrong, but I think for the cost and for the service that you get and how they execute that service, I think that they do that very well. I think places like TuneCore are probably a little bit more up to date technology wise, but I don't know that I'm completely convinced. Tiger Eyes, thank you for the bits. I'm not completely convinced that like TuneCore is the way to go, because only, and there's other ones out there, but I think those are probably the two biggest that come to mind. And then as far as the cost, if you go the TuneCore route, it's like, I think you can start very, very cheap, like nearly free, but they charge you like $10 a year. Now, $10 a year might not seem a lot, but I think that adds up to more albums that you have. Now, you take the CD Baby side, and that's who I use, and there's like a one-time cost. And I think for a whole album, it's like $70, I think. And I actually had gotten a coupon or something like that, and they have coupons all the time for it, or promotion codes, whatever you want to call them. And then you can get those down to like $30. So you can. It all depends on what you want. But they work off of like a one-time charge, and then for some of the PROs, the performing rights, and that they charge like a certain percentage. But for the most part, you're getting like 90% of your money up front, and then they take a little bit for basically handling everything, right? But if you don't make money, they don't make money. So I like that model versus paying somebody over and over again just to have my music out there and to have basically somebody collect my royalties. But yeah, I mean, it's, for me, I think that was my choice behind it, and it's a decision like anything else that you guys have to decide for yourself. But yeah, and that's how I thought of it, right? So you pay a one-time fee. I realize people have to do their job, and I think a lot of people are always, I think a lot of artists, I think, feel like they're starving artists, and they have to be cheap about everything. But at the end of the day, they want to get paid for their work. So I'm kind of the opinion that I have to pay other people to do their work as well. So I look at it as I have to publish, my music. I publish my music. They take care of, submitting it to all the different, places like Spotify and iHeartRadio and all that other good stuff. They take care of all that. I pay a one-time fee. And then it's rev share after that. So to me, that totally makes sense. Other people would rather, you get 100% of your royalties. Well, yeah, but you're paying $10 a year or $20 a year, whatever they charge you. But for me, I'm with you. I would rather go the one-time fee and go from there. But if you do decide to go with a place, make sure that you get associated with like BMI or another performing rights organization, and also make sure that you're getting a recording code and start stamping that on all your music. The ISRC code is important. As a matter of fact, even when it's on SoundCloud, I include the ISRC number, which is basically the recording code that uniquely identifies your song. And that way, when your music's played in different locations and those royalties always make sure that they come back to you. So it's an important thing, to make sure that when you're doing distribution that all that stuff is included. And that's one of the things that I think was, a huge learning experience post-music. I mean, you take the music out of it, right? I mean, if you're going to be independently publishing, you got to take your music, and then you have to do all of this work on the other half, which is, getting it through distribution, putting artwork together. I mean, when you look at, you got the one I wanted. I know. Wanted the Come On Bro one. You got the one I wanted. Nice. It figures. So for me, it was like, if you think about it, when you're done, it's a ton of business stuff. And I've worked in business for a very long time. So I mean, for me, it was just work. But for other people, I can see it be very daunting, and it's not. It's just effort. But the thing that's really important, if you're going to be independently publishing yourself, at least from my perspective, if you're going to be independently publishing yourself, you really have to look at the whole picture of everything and understand that the difference between hobby and job, the real difference between, taking your music and saying this is just a hobby and I just play with it, to it's going to be either a job or something that I would like to turn into a job one day, is doing all the rest of the work. The music is the nice creative part, but I think you have to look at it from the perspective of music's just the one piece. Just like if you were a particular company and you were producing, let's say, glassware or something along those lines, producing glassware is the easy part. It's all the other stuff that makes a real challenge, and that comes into taking your music, putting the art around it, and like I said, I did this art, I didn't do this drawing was originally that, but assembling all this and doing the, parchment paper and learning how to do all those different pieces on a particular album cover. I had to do all that. Once I did that, I had to package it up. So there's, portions of packaging up music and getting it mastered or doing your mastering and, making it sound like it's, professional music with enough loudness and that it's competing with the other music that's out there. And then you've got the publishing aspect of it. I got to publish my music and I have to get that out there. So that's a whole process. And then once it's published, you have royalty collection that you have to, worry about, and making sure that the place you use does that. And then the other piece of it as well is the marketing of your music, talking about it, getting the word out, just getting exposure to it, so that way people can listen to it and either good or bad, yeah, this sounds great, or no, this isn't my particular cup of tea. But yeah, hobby is one thing, but if you really want to take it to the next level, you have to look at all those different pieces, and those are big pieces, and it's work. It's just as much work as the creation process itself, and anybody that tells you otherwise is just lying to you, because it's not just take this music and go for it. Tiger Eyes. Thank you for the bits again. Are you trying to unlock another couple of heads? Is that what you're... So on the bits tonight, I know. Thank you guys all so much for the bits and hanging out and everything else. This has been... Gosh, I can't tell you how much fun this has been, talking with you guys and just hanging out and going over this stuff and talking about it, and then having you guys ask questions. So the 6 zombies bit, yeah. I think Tiger has been watching ads too like crazy. But yeah, I mean, if other people have questions, I'm glad to answer them. I mean, I don't pretend to even think that I have all the answers. It's a lot of doing all of this is a constant learning process, and I guess for me, I've spent my whole life that way. I many years ago, back when I was, I think, in high school or maybe just in college, I heard the term life learner, and I think it was one of those terms that like stuck with me. And I'm constantly always learning. So my release goals for 2017 and next spring, summer. So I think I hit my release goals for this 2017. That was my big goal. My big goal was to get this album out. It was to get the album out, and that was my big release goal this year. So I think I hit that goal. For next year's spring, summer, yeah, I think that I would like to at least produce 2 or 3 singles, maybe one EP before the summer. That would be a really good goal, is to have at least maybe 1 or 2 EPs complete before summer, maybe one in the spring and one for summer. It's like I said, it's a lot of work. I mean, anybody that has sat in front of a DAW for several hours knows it's just So, DJ Lovehouse, you actually bring up some of my biggest frustrations is that it's hard. I think with a vocalist, and again, just my opinion, I think with a vocalist it's very, very hard sometimes to work remotely with vocalists. I have done it, and a matter of fact, Matricula and I have actually worked together a little bit on doing some stuff for Twitch, and it's out on SoundCloud, and it was great working with her. It really was. 4 songs tracked, mastered, and promoted. So I've been, in all fairness, the mastering has been a big learning experience for me as well, because I'm mastering it myself with the help of Ozone, and if it wasn't for that software, there is absolutely no way this album would be done. There is absolutely no way. If it was not for Ozone, it just wouldn't be done. Because places like what is that? What's that? Lander. That like instant mastering service. I've checked it out. I've tried it out. I've not released anything with it, but I've checked it out, tried it out. Not happy with it. Looked at the cost of mastering, sending it out for mastering. Said to myself, I can't afford regular, like somebody to spend even 3 hours mastering a song. I just couldn't afford it. The cost was just way too high. But I was able to use Ozone, and there are people out there that I was able to watch on YouTube, and was able to listen to different things. Like I don't know if you've ever checked out the mastering show with Ian Shepherd. But a total professional in the industry. I mean, Ian Shepherd is that's a serious name in the industry, and I've watched his podcasts and stuff like that, and I've seen experience things on LANDR and stuff like that, and yeah, I mean, mastering is its own art form, but I kind of looked at it, and I looked at it from this perspective. I could have certainly saved up some money and sent the music out for mastering. I could have had a mastering engineer spend hours and putting tweaks on it that I may never have even thought of or been able to do. Could have been thousands of dollars to finish the mastering. But at the end of the day, I went ahead and I said to myself, well, you could spend all that money, and the chances of you recouping that money are probably pretty slim. I'm certainly not a Katy Perry. I'm not a Miguel Miggs. I'm not someone who is, making 6 figures or more, making music. Maybe I will be someday, right? But that's not today, and it's not going to be tomorrow. So from my perspective, I looked at it as, okay, I need to master the music, and I need it to not be just the loudness cranked up. And for me, and from what I was able to see from Ian Shepherd's tests and that, a lot of the like LANDR and the other places, they basically put a Smile EQ curve on it and crank up the loudness, and that's not what I wanted. So I wanted a little bit better. I wanted something that was actually EQ'd in the post mix stage, and that master to look right, or at least sound pretty good. And I think I was able to achieve that. If I listened to the and I'm guilty of it. I mean, if you look at my Ozone settings, and they're not the default settings, but if you look at them, I compress it was upward compression as well. I did compress a lot of that music, but that's only to make it sound better, and people do listen and like louder music. It's just a fact. But loudness, worse stuff aside, I needed to be able to get the tracks and everything sounding pretty decent. So for me, what I did is I just took Ozone, I did some mastering on it. I get it. I got it to the point that I was happy with it. I said to myself, this sounds pretty pro. I hate when I say that. Okay, this is professional. It is sounding great. But yeah, I mean, it was, and you don't know when I'm going to send this off to. So if I go with somebody that's budget, I don't know if they're taking Ozone and running your thing through a preset and saying, here you go, it sounds great, right? So I just took it upon myself. I said, you know what? I'll just spend the time. And this is kind of that Renaissance man thing in me. I'll just spend the time. I'll, read as much as I reasonably can. I will watch some videos that I reasonably can. Yeah, and you're right, DJ Lovehouse. But yeah, I basically said, I'm going to make this the best that I can make it, and that's what I'm going to publish. Yeah, DJ Lovehouse, I can't agree with you more. And I think in almost every one of the tracks that I've mastered through here with Ozone, I can almost guarantee you every single one of them's got the vintage limiter in it, and it's either set for tube or analog. That warmth feeling for me is the same thing. I think that and a lot of electronic music has it, a lot of it doesn't. And for me, I think that it's got to have that warm tone, that human feel, that analog feel. And I don't know if that's because I grew up through the 80s and everything was still analog. A lot of things were not analog back then, but a lot of things were all completely synthesized and all the warmth taken out of them. But yeah, I totally I have one. Thank you, Tiger Rez, but I think I'm almost out. Oh, excuse me. But yeah, I think for me it's the warmth too. You got to have that warmth in there, and yeah, I put it through that vintage limiter just so that way it's got that analog mastering sound to it, so it's got that little bit of warmth. Yep. Yeah, it's definitely one of those things that I've got to have that same warmth, and it's so interesting. I don't know if you guys can hear it. We'll give it a try, right? I mean, I'm not on any schedule here, so let me. Yeah, this is probably actually a great song to do this on as well. So I'm going to turn off the vintage limiter and I'll play it. And I think you guys should be able to hear the difference in the warmth. See, it's like that bass comes alive. And it's such a huge difference. Yeah, Matricula, it does. It takes so long, and I've had people stop by, and the offer is generally open to most people that are not crazy, and maybe a few of the slightly crazy ones, but like Matricula myself. But people are welcome to come over to the studio, and Tiger Eyes can even say I've had people come over and they're like, show me how you do what you do, and I'm like, well, I can kind of show you, but ultimately it's all up to you and your ears to come up with all the different sound. But yep, the magic hand. We got the magic hand. Oh, and I got the invisible glass now. So that one matched the chroma key. So, but yeah, I've actually shown people, how I put stuff together, and it's tough. I mean, it's not like something you can show somebody in an afternoon and expect somebody to be able to perfect a sound. It just takes. It's like playing a guitar, playing a piano, anything else. You got to put the time in. And what's that magic number? 10,000 hours. Yeah, I got to think I've surpassed that on a couple of different times, but it's just effort. You just have to go through, practice and refinement, and that's why I said, I mean, literally, just to give some perspective here. So, I mean, this is just pages and pages and pages. Just pages and pages of practice of, hey, this does, and those are the ones I kept. I can't tell you how many times I've sat down here, played on the keyboard a little, loaded up some instruments, and said, nope, I don't like any of it, and thrown it out, and not saved it at all. I mean, 2 hours of sitting here playing with stuff, and I didn't like it. Throw it out. I mean, that's all it is. It's just practice and refinement. So I know we're coming up on 8 o'clock my time. That's like 9 o'clock your time, Matricula. I didn't know if you were taking off or not, but I was going to see if anybody else had other questions. I can definitely stream longer, but I just wanted to see if any other people had different questions as well. If you had to take off, I know you said you had to cut out at some point tonight. And thank you so much, by the way, for. Can we get some hype for Matricula? She has been 9 a.m. China time. Awesome. That is awesome. It's 9 a.m. Like 9 p.m. 12 hours apart. Well, now, DJ Lovehouse, I know you're 12 hours off from me. So, yeah, I just wanted to give Matricula some hype and give her a follow. She's a music artist as well, and she just dropped her album on Bandcamp as well recently here, and I love her nerdy stuff. It's just I gush over the nerd stuff because I'm such a nerd. nerd at heart. So yeah, and Matricula, put your link to your Bandcamp in there as well, so anybody that's watching can go hang out and check it out as well. It's fun stuff. I totally love it. And if you turn into her channel, she's always crazy and fun. Matricula is kind of like my partner in crime on Twitch, I guess you'd say. But thank you, Matricula, for hanging out. And yeah, I love that robot song. That's like my favorite one. But thank you for hanging out and asking questions tonight. I totally appreciate it. Songs for gamers. Songs for gamers. All right, so wow, we covered a lot tonight in a couple of hours. I was actually a little bit worried that I wouldn't even have a couple of hours worth of things to talk about here, but you guys, oh, nice, Matricula, nice. But you guys have actually really been great tonight in asking questions. So if anybody has any others, I'm glad to answer them, or how I get particular sounds or anything out of anything that I do here. But if we don't have any questions, then we may call it a night. But I want to give everybody the opportunity to ask any, because this is fun. I love talking about what I do here. Yeah, I've been kind of working on that, Matricula, to take these VODs and put them out on YouTube, so that way they stay there pretty much forever. So that's been something I've been working on here, because they have the export to YouTube. I didn't expect to start building a YouTube channel. That wasn't my goal, but it's just a result of trying to save some of these different videos, because I want to make sure that we preserve some of them. Yeah. I'm actually really glad that you guys have asked the questions that you've asked tonight, just because I think a lot of I do actually. I have so out on SoundCloud. There's one of them, but I've got some stuff on Mixcloud too. I don't know, probably some. I mean, I wouldn't say it's my best stuff. But I think the one out on SoundCloud is probably one of my favorites. Let me grab that link for you. So let me put the link in there. And it's interesting. So we talk about DJing, which actually wasn't a topic I was planning to discuss tonight, but I'm more than glad to. So I do DJ, and one of the things that I do with I'm not just, so I think a lot of DJs are DJs playing for DJs, and that's probably one of my more favorite mixes there. So if you want to hear something that I think I'm pretty proud of, that is definitely one of the songs that are mixes that I'm more proud of. So I think a lot of DJs, they play for DJs. They go to clubs and stuff like that, and they try to pimp all their DJ friends to go over there and go hang out. I've done that, and that's probably not the most fun that I've ever had DJing. I actually do, when I do DJing, I do it as a working DJ. And what I mean is, hell, man, I'll do weddings, I'll do parties. I have done parties, I have done weddings. I do all of that, and to me, those are serious pay gigs. They are far more money than I've made. Going to a bar or something like that with 5 other DJs and stuff like that, and hanging out. It is one of those things where I've gone to and done weddings and filled a dance floor and had just an incredible time, gotten paid for it, and go ahead and then at the end of the night have the wedding couple or whatever say, this was the best. We've had gone to other weddings, and you guys rocked it. So I've totally loved doing that kind of stuff, and I think that is very rewarding. And anybody that's like, oh well, you're not doing the club scene, you're not doing that. You know what? I have probably made more at doing somebody's graduation party than some DJs have made at a club. I mean, unless you're going to constantly work at it and you got a steady gig at it, it can be tough, like getting, even paid decently for it. So, yeah, it's one of those things. It is. And you know what? It's not so much that. I mean, I appreciate the admiration. I would not say that I don't appreciate that, but I think it's more of a good feeling for me that I was able to make somebody's night just freaking awesome. I mean, to me, that is so cool, right? I mean, yes, I'm glad they admired it, but I think it was more for me when I see a dance floor filled. And when I am DJing and I see a dance floor filled and I see people having a good time, man, that is what all of this for me. That's what I'm in it for. And the same thing goes to the music that I produce as well. I mean, if somebody's like, hey man, this is my jam, man, that is for me. That is it. And nobody has to come up and say, you did a great job. I can literally see that, and that's all that matters. And I guess it's more passive admiration, but yeah, I mean, it's a good feeling. It's a feeling of being appreciated, I guess, and yeah, that's kind of what it comes down to. But yeah, I totally know what you're talking about there. But yeah, I mean, but I don't look at anything that I do here as like so elitist that I'm not going to be able to work a gig for a wedding or something like that. I always think of it as the other way around. I've had people that come up and they go, wow, that was like absolutely amazing. But I don't think that, those particular people realize, when I'm being hired, that I've produced music, that I have done, live streaming like this and done DJ sets online and, all that different stuff. I don't think people realize that. So when they hire me and they have a really great time, I think they just look at it as, somebody that had a really great time. But I don't think they obviously they're never going to tie two and two together most of the time. So, it's like, this is where all this, came from. So, yeah. And here, we'll put the social. Yep. So there's my SoundCloud and Discord and my Twitter. Yeah, I post most everything on Twitter. So I think my neck is sore. I think I am actually coming down with something.